Hi there, and welcome back to my channel, and Happy New Year. I hope you've had a fantastic Christmas. Well, today, what I want to do is introduce you to a little habit I've got into over the last 20 years, which is that at the start of the year, I go through my 100 best films of all time. I've been doing this since about 2003, and I started doing it because in 2002, Sight and Sound published their list of the 10 best films ever made, as picked by critics and academics. They've just done this in the last month, and I'm going to be doing a response video to that in the next month, so look out for that. But back in 2002, I was really upset because I thought that the list was a bit populist and a bit pedestrian. But I thought to myself, well, okay, well, what would you pick? Put your money where your mouth is. And so I thought, I'd just turned 30, and I thought I'd watched a lot of films by this point. It's time to sort of take stock and see what I think. And so I sat down to write down my list of the 100 best films. And what I've done is every new year, I sort of top up the list. I go back and revisit it and change things, according to what new films I've seen or new ideas I've had. And I keep changing the list every year. And this is about the 21st edition of the list. And I've left it in below. You'll see a link, and this will take you to my website where you can see the list. And while you're there, you can look around the rest of the website, which is a collection of my writings over the years, reviews and articles and all sorts of things. So I started the list back in 2002 in response to this Sight and Sound list. And I started by sitting down and writing, names. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because you end up putting films in that you kind of half like, or films that you think you should put in, your Kurosawas, your Griffiths, your John Fords. And I said, no, I want this list to be entirely personal. I don't want to feel that I have to include all the greats and all the classics and all the films you're supposed to pick. I just want to pick what I want to pick, right? And also, these films have really got to earn their place. So what I did was I went back and I started doing 10 top tens, right? That I could submit to Sight and Sound and say, these are my 10 best films ever. And I was never going to repeat a director, so there's only going to be one film per director, because otherwise it gets a bit boring. You choose 10 Hitchcocks and 5 Carl Dreyers and 6 Ozus. It's a bit dull. So only one film per director, right? And I even started sort of doing things like seeding it. So I picked my 20 favourite directors and put 2 of them in each top 10. And then, as Andrew Sarris would say, The Far Side of Paradise, 2 other great directors in each top 10. Put in a few art house films, a few cult movies. It got a bit silly. I was like sort of banding it, So I'd have one sort of film that I thought was beautiful, one that I thought was a humanist classic, one was a great genre classic. It was getting a bit silly. But anyway, if you look at the list carefully, you can see this, the top 100 is still kind of in that order. Now, what was the criteria for me putting films in there? The first criteria was that they had to be films that I both admired and liked. There's a school of thinking that has come into academia and talking about art in the last 30, 40 years. The posh name for it is cultural relativism, which is that no one can say anything is better than something else. If you like EastEnders and you think it's better than Shakespeare, then who's to say you're wrong? EastEnders is the same as Shakespeare, which is a school of thinking that I think is bollocks. I think it's a kind of intellectual cop-out. And I'm going to be talking about that in my discussion of the top 10 Sight and Sound films from last year in a forthcoming video. Suffice to say, I kind of think it's a kind of inverted snobbery against perceived elitism, And I think there's nothing wrong with grading art and saying this is better, this is a more beautiful, more challenging, more beautifully crafted work of art than this. But there's also nothing wrong with saying, look, that might be a great work of art, but it doesn't really touch me. Whereas this rather silly little sci-fi movie over here, I really enjoy. I know it's not as beautiful as, say, a film by Murnau or von Sternberg, but I still like it more. So there's a difference between admiring and appreciating something as a work of art and liking something just as a bit of fun. For example, if I was to say to you, you go down the road and have a McDonald's, you're not saying that food is as good as a cordon bleu meal, or something done by a chef, or something, even your mum's home cooking, are you? It's tasty when you have it and you like it, but you're not saying it's as great as a meal you can buy in the West End. No one would say that. So why do we say that about a work of art? So for me, these films that I picked in my top 100, they had to be films that I admired and I could defend as works of art, but also films that touched me personally. I didn't want to have what a friend of mine calls hair shirt films. Films that you feel that you have to put in there because they're important. No, I don't care about that. I'm only going to put in films that are important to me, right? As well as films that I think are good movies. The second criteria for picking the films was longevity. You know, I want to pick films that stay with me and that become part of my mental landscape. You know, one of the best nights I ever had at the cinema, I went to see Ang Lee's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Really entertaining film. I can tell you I've not thought once about it since, and I've never revisited it. There are other films that have bored me, where I've fallen asleep, where I've come out feeling confused and thinking, what the hell was that? And I cannot stop thinking about them. Abbas Kiarostami, the Iranian filmmaker, put this beautifully. He said there are some films that take you hostage. They're fast-paced, they throw everything at you, they grip you, and then they dump you at the end and you got nothing out of it. There are other films that might make you fall asleep and bore you to tears, and then weeks later you wake up thinking about them. That's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in longevity. That's probably the most important value in a film or work of art for me. The third criteria is that these films had to be important. They had to be important experiences that stayed with me. Not just good films. So, for example, No Country for Old Men, right? The Coen brothers film. Great film. Very well made, well written, well acted. And it's not important to me at all. It didn't tell me about anything. It didn't shift my focus on cinema. It didn't shift my focus on life. It was just a good film. To me, that's a bit redundant. I want something that gives me an experience that stays with me and feeds my ideas and feeds my love of cinema. And the fourth criteria is I like films. There's a brilliant phrase, UFO, unidentified filmic object. I like movies that come out of nowhere and do something completely idiosyncratic, something completely eccentric and weird and different. And they're uncategorizable, you know. And maybe you don't understand them, maybe they don't make any sense, maybe there's some parts of them you don't like, but wrestling with them is quite exciting and fun. So those are my four criteria. Over the years since I first started doing the list, I've seen so many films and there are so many directors I love that I kept adding to the list. So I added another 5 top 10s to make it up to 150. Then I added another 5 top 10s to make it up to 200. And then I added 100 more films in alphabetical order, then another 100 films in alphabetical order. And that's how the list stands today. It's 400 films that you'll see from the link down below. And they're graded in 4 parts. The top 100, top 150, top 200, top 300, top 400. And I hope you enjoy the list. I hope you find films that you like. I hope you find some new titles that you've never heard of and you might want to try. Is there a film that you see that you think is absolute rubbish? Let me know in the comments below. And as I say, please look around the site at other articles and lists and reviews that I've written and let me know what you think. And if you've got any tips or advice on my website, I'd really like to hear them. Thanks very much. And once again, Happy New Year.